cover story tonight is from Sochi, where Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi met with Russian President Vladimir Putin for an informal dialogue. And this seems to have become fashionable now. A few weeks back, Prime Minister Modi was in Wuhan in China to hold a no-agenda summit with President Xi Jinping. It may be a good way to perhaps manage expectations and not spell out the talking points. Be that as it may, the idea certainly is catching up, and today's talks also come at a critical time in international relations. The world is staring at new challenges after the US pulled out of the Iran deal last week. There's been a lot of churn. Prime Minister Modi used today's opportunity to reflect on the deep ties between India and Russia to start with.
लंबे अरसे से भारत और रशिया एक अटूट मित्र रहे। लगातार हमारे बायलैटरल मीटिंग होती रहती है, लेकिन मैं राष्ट्रपति पुतिन का बहुत आभारी हूं। उन्होंने एक इनफॉर्मल समिट के रूप में, इनफॉर्मल मीटिंग के रूप में मुझे निमंत्रित किया, और इसलिए इतने लंबे कालखंड में एक नया आयाम हमारे संबंधों में जुड़ा। लगातार आपसे बार बार मिलने का मौका मिला है, साथ बैठ करके सोचने का अवसर मिला है, और मिल बैठ करके दोनों देश आगे बढ़े उसके लिए प्रयास करने का सौभाग्य मिला। मुझे भी पिछले 4 साल से आपके साथ कंधे से कंधा मिलाकर के चलने का अवसर मिला है। हर बायलैटरल रिलेशन हो, अंतर्राष्ट्रीय संबंधों की बात हो, खुल करके हमने विचार विमर्श किया है और विश्वास के साथ आगे बढ़ने का हम दोनों को अवसर मिला, और इसके लिए मैं खुशी व्यक्त करता हूँ।
And just like the Wuhan summit, there were no formalities or protocol. This meeting comes ahead of President Putin's visit to India in October this year. The changing geopolitical situation has also affected India-Russia ties, and they may want to mend some of that. Defense deals worth billions of dollars between India and Russia have been hit by American sanctions. A new American law allows the Trump administration, rather forces it, to impose sanctions on those who do business with Russia's military or intelligence sectors. India does that, and this is very, very critical for India. Russian military hardware accounts for 62% of India's total weapons imports in the past 5 years, meaning that 62% of our defense equipment is bought from Russia. India is also in talks with Russia to buy 5 S-400 long-range surface-to-air missile systems. Washington's decision to slap fresh sanctions on Iran, could also upset India's plans in Tehran. Before the Prime Minister's visit, top officials from the Indian government had paid a visit to Russia to do the groundwork. The Defence Minister of India, Nirmala Sitharaman, National Security Advisor Ajit Doval and Foreign Secretary Vijay Gokhale had all held talks with top Russian officials. Why is Russia so keen? Let's look at the Russian side. The country has been under global scrutiny. More than 25 countries, remember, expelled Russian diplomats over the poisoning of a spy in London recently. Many have slammed Russia for the crisis in Syria. Moscow cannot afford at this point to lose more diplomatic partners. So Vladimir Putin is reaching out to old friends and new. Let's get a word from Moscow then. WION's correspondent Lucy Taylor is joining us live. Good evening, Lucy. We've seen the images coming out of Sochi. Are we any wiser about the conversation? What was discussed today?
Yes, well, this was a meeting between two world leaders who enjoy what they call a privileged strategic partnership. They already meet annually, as you may know, but this was on top of that. This was an extra informal meeting, and as a result, they kept a lot of what was said private. Prime Minister Modi is in Russia to visit the St. Petersburg Economic Forum, which is later this week. But for today, he was meeting President Putin in Sochi, in Mr. Putin's own residence there. We didn't hear very much of what was said. As you said, they didn't have any of the formal proceedings that they might normally have if it was a more public meeting. This was a meeting between two people to really discuss the issues. But we have heard a little bit from the foreign minister, the Russian foreign minister, about what was discussed. He said that they, first of all, emphasised the important business partnership between Russia and India. They spoke about the growth in bilateral trade, 20% growth apparently in 2017, and they said that in the last few months of 2018 it has grown even higher than that. And he said several other issues related to the region, related to security, combating terrorism, related to the regional blocs that both Russia and India are in. But as you said, particularly issues affecting the region in particular. So what we were told was that they were discussing military technical cooperation. We can imagine that that will involve weapons sales, as you were saying, which are very much important to both countries. Russian arms are sold to India. Russia is a big supplier of India's arms. And very much affected by the US sanctions which are being introduced at the moment. So we can imagine that was a big part of what was said.
Indeed. Lucy, are defense ties with India the mainstay of relationship, this relationship for Russia? How does Moscow see Delhi in the global pecking order?
I think it's a very important partnership. As I've said, these two leaders meet very regularly. They're also both members of the BRICS units, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China. So they meet every year as part of that summit as well. And the business in particular, the military business, is very important. As you said, 62% of India's arms come from Russia, and India is the biggest importer of arms in the world. So for Russia, that's a very important market. There are also historic links between these two. There are military systems in India which Russia still supplies parts and maintenance for, which were installed back in Soviet times. So that's still ongoing. And if this is hit by US sanctions, then that will be a very difficult problem for Russia. There's also other areas of bilateral trade. And further than that, the region that these two countries occupy is very important. They're two big players in what they call the Eurasian continent, how they describe it. And Russia very much wants to have an important role in that region as a mediator. But I think Russia understands that India is very important in discussing how these different issues which affect the region will be dealt with going forward.
Indeed. Lucy Taylor, thanks very much for joining us with the perspective from Moscow. Let's talk about the setting. Vladimir Putin is hosting the Indian Prime Minister in Sochi. It's his favourite city, we are told. As president, Putin has the option to host a head of state at any state summer home in Russia, but he has often been linked with several lavish mansions that were allegedly constructed with state funds for his personal use. Our next report takes you inside some of these stunning and awfully expensive Russian dachas, complete with gold-tiled swimming pools. Take a look.
Sochi is Vladimir Putin's favorite city. The Russian president spends much of his time in this city. Russians share Putin's love for Sochi. This is one of the warmest cities of Russia, and a large number of Russians visit Sochi to escape the biting winter. Due to the Russian president's love for Sochi, the city holds political significance. The Russian president has rubbed shoulders with several world leaders at his Bukharov-Rushi residence in Sochi. The same residence was chosen to host India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi when he came to the city for the informal talks. As president of Russia, Putin can use several vacation residences across Russia. Of them, this billion-dollar mansion perhaps is the most controversial. This mansion has all the facilities that a president would need. Lavish gardens and Italian architecture make this palace a sight to behold. Located on the Black Sea Riviera, this residence, also known as Dasha Putin, was allegedly built for Putin's personal use. Critics of the Russian president claim that state resources were spent in building this property. Putin's main rival, Alexei Navalny, claims that leading construction companies are hand in glove with the Russian president. The villa near the Black Sea sparked a lot of negative press against Putin in the global media. Publicly, the Russian president has never been seen using the residence. But last year, a report in the Daily Mail claimed that another lavish holiday home, this time in Vyborg Bay, is being built for Putin. This mansion is called Villa Selgren and has been built 12 miles from the Russian border with Finland. It was built in 1913 and was even used in a Soviet film on Sherlock Holmes in 1987. Photos online show gold-plated tiles in the swimming pool, a steam sauna and a lavish study room with Russia's eagle emblem. Bureau Report, WION.
Now, they've been a familiar sight in successive Republic Day parades, and for many years, columns of T-90 tanks rolling down Delhi's Rajpath, also models of the Su-30 fighter jets or the aircraft carrier Vikramaditya, all testimony to the 3 decades and more of India-Russia defense relationship. That is changing. According to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute or SIPRI, which tracks military spending, how is it changing? India's budget for Russian military hardware fell from 79% to 62% in 4 years, from 2008 to 2012. Over the next 5 years, from 2012 to 2015, it rose to 68%. The US is the second biggest arms exporter to India. It has 14% of the market share. Israel comes third with a little over 7%. By any standards, 68% tells you that Russian equipment remains the mainstay in the Indian military even today. Who knows, the next 5 years could see India's dependence on Russian equipment rise even further. Some big-ticket purchases are on the cards now. This includes the S-400 missile defense system for over $5 billion, 200 Kamov helicopters for over $1 billion, possibly 2 nuclear-powered attack submarines for $2.5 billion, 4 new stealth frigates for over $3 billion. A lot of money and a lot of equipment, in short. In other words, despite diversifying its arms supplies in recent years, India will remain dependent on Russian equipment for many more years. There are risks involved in this approach, especially for India. Russia has a stranglehold on Indian military. It can play politics in the supply of spare parts and even vital ammunition. And we say this because this has happened in the past. It can happen again. The other danger is the passage of a US law last year called Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act. It's a new act. It was passed by the US Congress last year. It imposes sanctions on any country trading with Russia or buying Russian military hardware. So whether India buys Russian oil or arms, the US will impose sanctions. India has protested sections of the US government which are sympathetic, but Washington says that its hands are tied. They cannot make exemptions. This act does not permit President Trump to exclude India from the ambit of sanctions, at least for the moment. The US has been told that such acts hurt its own case. It counters America's assurances to India that it is a reliable defense partner. India will stop buying American military equipment, and that will be a big loss for the US. India has bought $15 billion of American arms so far. It will also affect India's growing strategic relationship with Washington, especially countering China in the Pacific. Now, in terms of geopolitics, the US with its allies on every continent holds out the potential of enormous strategic benefits for India. But India also values the Russian connection, since they are the only country willing to part with sensitive strategic platforms that no other country will give India. So it's a tightrope walk for New Delhi, and Prime Minister Modi, given the circumstances, perhaps is doing his best. So it all boils down to the chemistry and the personality of the leaders who are talking. It's worth comparing the two men who met in Sochi today. While one rules the world's largest country, the other governs the world's largest democracy. On Gravitas tonight, let's try and understand the personalities of Narendra Modi and Vladimir Putin. Both leaders present a larger-than-life image. They're loved and hated equally, and they know it. Worshipped by their followers, dissed by their detractors. Prime Minister Modi and President Putin are often termed as statesmen, authoritarian, and leaders with a vision, depending on who you're talking to. Their ideologies have been shaped by the organizations they belong to. For Prime Minister Modi, it's the RSS. For President Putin, it's the KGB. They both carry a messiah image for their followers. Both leaders have transformed their strong personalities into big brands as well. As far as foreign policy is concerned, both Putin and Modi have managed to make their presence felt strongly. While Mr. Modi has succeeded in seducing the West, Mr. Putin has ensured that Russia is not taken lightly by the West. Putin makes controversial decisions. He faces sanctions and isolation, but he knows that he will not let Western powers dominate the dynamics of world politics. As for Prime Minister Modi, his numerous foreign visits might irk his critics, but his followers believe that India's image has improved only because the Prime Minister of India chose to break the ice. Both leaders are terrific orators. Their speeches and their skill to touch the right chord among the voters has ensured them handsome political rewards. The speeches are high on rhetoric and hyper-nationalism, some would say, and this seems to have worked for both of them. Another similarity between the two leaders is their politics of masculinity, some say. Both leaders bring in that macho image to their personality. They're assertive, they're fierce, they know the tricks of the trade and they use them well. While Putin loves golf and horse riding, Modi is enthusiastic about yoga. The Russian president has often made public appearances with his rough stunts. Prime Minister Modi built a narrative around his 56-inch chest that was spoken about in the last election. Both leaders are excellent in perception management and they are performance-driven. They differ on many levels as well. Those who work with Prime Minister Modi swear by his punctuality, but the same cannot be said about President Putin. Those who have had to wait because of Putin's legendary tardiness include the Pope himself, John Kerry, the Queen of England, his ex-wife, and even the parents of children who were killed in a plane crash. Another contrast between the two leaders is their approach towards social media. While Modi has mastered the art of using social media and aims to make digital India a reality in no time, President Putin is just the opposite. He does not even own a smartphone, we are told.